Hey everyone, welcome back to the weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And as always, we'll go through both the fundamentals and technicals of all the stocks in my focus list. And this week in general, it was definitely easier to find setups versus last week. A lot of better kind of chart patterns out there where you can define risk. And hopefully that's telling when it comes to the market and the performance of growth stocks this week. So diving in, let's start with our first stock, which is AMAT. And overall, this is in one of the top 40 groups, electron semiconductor equipment. And overall, you can see great growth in terms of earnings and sales the past 3 quarters. Margins are also accelerating the past 4 quarters. And you've got strong estimates for 2021 and 2022. The overall composite rating is as strong as you can get, a 99. You've got a nice increase in fund ownership and 2 high-quality funds in there as well. And as for the chart, it's been trending beautifully, bouncing off the 21 EMA here and here. And now it pulled back near to the 50 SMA, but probably bounced off the 10-week here, and now has formed a nice pivot right here below 120. So what I'm looking for is a 2-2 reversal here, using this high as a potential pivot point, and then also this point right here is also a pivot. Next up, we've got 5 below. You can see great growth the past quarter in terms of earnings and sales. And you can see not the greatest estimates for 2021, but in 2022, it's supposed to increase in terms of EPS, up 91%, and you have the estimate revisions, which is very important to keep track of, up for both 2021 and 2022. And overall, the composite rating is a pretty poor 75, and also the fund ownership is pretty much flat over the past 2 years, but you do have 4 high-quality funds invested in this company. And overall, you can see that earnings are due in 3 days, so keep that in mind, but I'm looking for a strong move on volume after earnings through these pivots, and eventually above 200 into all-time highs. So next up, we've got FUTU, which has been an incredibly strong stock recently, and it has pulled back quite a bit and kind of formed a base here, but hopefully it's forming the right side at this moment. Overall, looking at the earnings and sales, you can see pretty spectacular results here. Last quarter earnings up 999%, sales up 276%, and after-tax margins up 43.1%. The estimates for 2020 are up 594%, and for 2021 up a further 78%, with the estimate revisions upward. So it's really showing basically a breakout year for 2020 and further growth in 2021. The overall composite rating is a very strong 99. You have some growth in fund ownership, especially the most recent quarters, but you don't have any high quality funds, which does kind of worry me a little bit investing into this company. And overall, it has moved quite a long way, but it is forming a base here and potentially bottoms right here at around the point where the 50 SMA is at currently, and has moved up strongly and now has kind of formed a pivot here at Friday's high, which is at about this level, and the high is at 169.38. Moving on, we've got LDI, a recent IPO, and overall you can see spectacular earnings and sales growth the past 4 quarters. Last quarter earnings up 999%, sales up 194%, and margins strong as well. And overall, no real estimates for 2020, but in 2021, it's supposed to earn $2.84, and you can see the estimate revisions are downward. And overall, the composite rating is a very poor 29. No funds own this currently, but the chart pattern is potentially forming the bottom of this IPO base here. And overall, I love how tight it's been the past few days, and you've got a potential pivot at Thursday's high as well as Wednesday's high. I'm looking for a move through those points on above average volume, ideally over 100, 200% volume run rate. Moving on, we've got MP Materials Corp, which you can see is not yet profitable, but you do have nice sales growth, up over 50% the past few quarters. No real earnings here to speak of. The composite rating is only a 54, and you do see an increase in fund ownership, which is a positive, but no high-quality funds just yet. And overall, it's pulled back nicely to this pivot after bouncing off the 50 SMA here. And you can use this Friday's high as a pivot, as well as the Thursday high, which is at 43.67. So a move through that on volume would be a potential setup. Moving on, we've got MRVI, which has very strong earnings and sales growth the past few quarters. Great estimates for 2021. In 2022, the estimates are down 2%, but the estimate revisions are up, which is always a good sign. And overall, the composite rating is a very strong, well, not super strong, but a decent 87. And overall, I really like the look of the fund ownership already, given that it's such a recent IPO. You can see that already 208 funds are in this, as well as 2 high-quality funds, which is always good to see. And look at the chart, you can see it moved up from a stage 1 cup with handle. Is a little bit choppy here, but is tightening up a little bit under this point. And you could use this high right here on last Wednesday, and that's at 37.40 as a potential pivot. And you can also use this pivot right here, 37.26 as well. Moving on, we've got Micron Technology, and overall you can see nice growth in terms of earnings and sales the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022. You can see 67% in 2021, 89% in 2022, and the estimate revisions are up as well, which is always a good sign. The overall composite is a very strong 95. Decent growth in fund ownership, not explosive, given that this is a kind of more mature company and you don't have any high quality funds invested into this stock. And overall, it's tightening up nicely after pulling back to the 50 SMA. It's now back above the 21 EMA, and I would use these highs right here. And Thursday is at 90.22 as potential pivots. So move through this on volume would be a potential entry setup. You could set the risk at the low of the day or this low right here on Friday, which is at 86.43. Moving on, we've got RVLV. And just before we talk about the fundamentals, if we go to a weekly chart, this is right near its IPO high. It's just above it at this point, and this high is at 48.36. And if we go back to a daily, you can see that it's just below it at Friday's close. So this is a potential green line breakout next week. And overall, you can see nice growth in earnings the past 2 quarters. The estimates aren't super strong for 2021, but you can see they are supposed to be up 37% in 2022, although the estimate revisions for that year are downwards. The overall composite rating is a 97. Decent growth in fund ownership over the past 2 years, and one high quality fund in there as well. And overall, I would use that green line as a potential pivot, as well as this high at 48.66. I want to see a move through those points on above average volume, and ideally closing the week above 50. Moving on, we've got SAM, or Boston Beer Company, and you can see great growth in earnings and sales the past few quarters. Great estimates for 2021 and 2022. Great earnings history as well if you look back all the way to 2014. And you can see a decent composite rating at 93. Nice growth in fund ownership, and 5 high quality funds in there as well. And look at the chart, you can see it's just below this prior kind of flat base consolidation pivot. And that's at 1092.8. And overall, I want to see a move through that level on above average volume, bouncing off the 21 EMA, and also moving through the high of this past Wednesday, which was at 1161.82. Moving on, we've got SI, which is definitely a volatile stock. It is kind of correlated with Bitcoin, so keep that in mind. This stock isn't for everybody, but overall, you can see nice earnings and sales the past quarter, and fantastic earnings estimates for 2021 and 2022, up 50% in 2021, and up a further 33% in 2022, and the estimate revisions are up as well. The overall composite rating is as good as it gets at 99. Great growth in fund ownership, and 2 high-quality funds invested in this stock as well. And overall, it's bounced off nicely. The 50 SMA here retook the 21 EMA and now has pulled back on this past Friday, forming a pivot here at 145.65. So that is SI. And moving on, we've got SMPL, which is another stock pulling back to a prior pivot. And overall, you can see strong earnings and sales growth the past few quarters. Decent estimates for 2021, up 15%, up a further 12% expected in 2022, although the estimate revisions are down for that year. And overall, the composite rating is an 83. And look at the fund ownership. This pretty much hasn't grown over the past 2 years, and you don't have any high quality funds invested into this company. And as for the chart, I love the gap up here. Nice volume coming in. Then it forms a nice stage 2 consolidation, moves up on above average volume, and then pulls back on these 2 days, which could be a negative. But if you look at the volume, it's much less than this breakout day, and it's staying above that pivot. So a potential reversal here through these highs, or an undercut and reclaim of this prior pivot on above average volume would be a potential setup. Moving on, we've got Twitter, which I did start a position on this past Friday, and I'm looking to add this week if it kind of confirms to the upside. And you can see nice earnings report the past quarter, earnings up 52%, sales up 28%, and after-tax margins up 24.3%. And in 2021, it's supposed to be profitable, and it's supposed to increase in terms of annual EPS up 31% in 2022, with the estimate revisions up for both years. And overall, the composite rating is a 92. You've got a kind of steady increase in fund ownership here, and 2 high-quality funds in there as well. And as for the chart, it moved up strongly from the stage 1B consolidation, and then has pulled back given the market weakness, but is holding above that 21 EMA. And I love the recent action, how tight it's been, given that a lot of stocks have been increasingly volatile. Moving on, we've got ZBRA, and looking at the earnings and sales, you can see nothing explosive here. Last quarter earnings were up 25%, so up 10%, margins up 18.3%, but really not explosive growth here. But the estimates are pretty strong for 2021 and 2022. The composite rating is at 92. And we've got nice growth in fund ownership and Fidelity Contra Fund with a position as well. And looking at the chart, I really love the character of the stock. You can see how tightly it trades, respects its key moving averages. When it doesn't hold the 21 EMA, it holds the 50. And recently, it was acting really well given the market weakness, holding that 21 EMA. And like Twitter, is tightening up nicely here, forming a pivot at Friday's high, as well as Thursday's high at 483.9. So that is ZBRA. And last on the list, we've got ZDGE. And overall, you can see nice growth in earnings the past 2 quarters, sales up as well. Great estimates for 2022, just supposed to be profitable in 2021. The overall composite rating is an 84. Fund ownership over the past 2 years is not great. You can see it's pretty much flat, and you don't have any high quality funds invested into this stock. And looking at the chart, you can see that earnings are actually due in 1 day, so keep that in mind. And I'm looking for a move through this high at 10.7 on above average volume, and ideally building a cushion before earnings or waiting until after to start a position. But overall, holding above that 50 SMA, I love the upside reversal action on this day, the 5th, and overall it looks pretty strong given the overall market weakness. It has pulled back significantly from 14.8, but it is holding above that 10 mark. So a little bit lower price than I usually go for, but I think it's trending well. It's an early stage stock, and it's definitely worth mentioning in this video. So overall, that is a quick run through of the kind of fundamentals and technicals of all the stocks on my focus list. And overall, my top 3 setups for this week are MP, SI, and RVLV. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys in future videos.